So maybe one of the biggest questions that we do ask is, what is this about all this pain and suffering? If there's this good, loving God, why is the world such a mess? But here's the thing about the question. In order to stop suffering, you have to intervene. You have to stop what's going on. But God has a picture that's a bit bigger than this. And there is a great love that God showed in this, that from the very beginning in the creation of mankind, He loved us enough to give us the freedom and the dignity to choose whether we wanted to follow Him or not. God has never forced us to follow Him. In fact, even in the beginning, He put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil right in the garden, basically say, here's a tree. I'm telling you, you can eat of every other tree of this garden, including the tree of life, but don't eat of this tree. Now, He allowed Adam and Eve to be in the garden with that tree, and He allowed them to be tempted to eat of that tree. And ultimately, they chose to eat of the tree their Creator said don't eat. Satan had tempted them, deceived them, got them to mistrust the Creator, and ultimately they rejected the Creator and chose away. Now, the reality of what they did was immediately when they ate of that tree, their eyes were opened. They realized they were naked. They became ashamed. They hid themselves, and they became afraid of God. And frankly, that's mostly what humanity's going through still today. We try to hide ourselves from God. We try to take actions and steps away from God, not realizing God has been on our side the whole time. God loved us from the beginning, and He didn't make us in a way that was supposed to go down the way of destruction. But yet, knowing what would happen, He knew from the foundation of the earth that when we did, He had a great remedy, that His love would show who He is, even in the rejection and the suffering that came. But when man sinned, man took of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It set man on a path of suffering, of toil, of pain in life. Pain in childbirth began at that time. The toil of dealing with the weeds of the field and trying to bring forth food and crop. It was not going to be an easy life. And ultimately, that all came as a result of allowing sin. Sin doesn't only change what goes on in our personal lives. It happens in the people around us. And what God was showing is even happens in the environment. The earth was changed because of sin. And so we live in an environment where there's a lot of suffering. And ultimately that suffering was brought about by a choice to say, I don't want to go your way, God. I want to go my own way. I look and want to make choices for myself. And God's saying, I'll let you choose that. So when we look at suffering, we should have an understanding of the history of how suffering started, because ultimately it is God saying, I'll let you choose. And now here we are as a collection of people who are all choosing ways contrary to God in essence, and causing pain and suffering. God doesn't want people to go around murdering or robbing or stealing or raping or pillaging or oppressing. This isn't what He designed. He designed man to be free, for man to have land, for man to eat and partake of the things that He created on the earth. It is mankind that has chosen a way that leads to suffering and pain. But through this suffering and pain, what God does is He makes a way through Jesus Christ to begin a path out of the pain and out of the way of this world, to show us a way of love and life where we can receive Jesus Christ, where we can receive healing from the wounds that we have suffered and the things that we've gone through in this life. And understanding this, that it is only through much suffering that we will end up inheriting the kingdom of God. But in Revelation chapter 21, there is a beautiful promise that when God basically sends His Son to this earth, there will be a rulership and reign and a final judgment by which He's going to cast out the things that are still wanting to live in sin, still wanting to live choosing a way of suffering and pain and misery and death. And what God will do is actually destroy these things, including death itself. He's going to basically destroy death itself. And when death itself is destroyed, there will be a kingdom with God our Father dwelling among all those who willingly choose Him and who willingly want to go in His way of love. And He says, and in that time, the tabernacle of God will be among men. He will dwell with them. We will be His people. He will be our God. And then there will be no more pain. There'll be no more sorrow. There'll be no more crying. There'll be no more death. So all the former things of this world that we're so used to, the suffering and the pain, it is all going to pass away. And that's what God is inviting you and me to understand that He gave us the choice to choose suffering if we want it. He lets us be cursed if we want it. He would rather we be blessed. But He says, if you want cursing, I'll let you choose cursing. He would rather we have life, but He'll let us choose death. He gives us the dignity of choice. But what He's asking is, if we will come to Him and receive the life in Him, He is offering to us a kingdom that we will be able to be a part of, where there will be no more suffering, no more pain, no more sorrow, no more crying, nor more death. And that's what I would encourage you to choose.